Hello, Internet. My name is John Kulas. I'm a 20-year professor of industrial and organizational psychology, a 10-year user of R for the traditional, standard, boring statistical applications. And for the last 7, 8, maybe more now, I've been saying the same intro here for 79 weeks. But roughly 7 or 8 years, I'd say. I've also been wrapping my analyses with the communication of those analyses. So executing entire projects through the same platform, uh, and that platform being R. So every week I get together with an increasingly dwindling number of co-hosts. Hopefully, some of them, now that summer's upon us, will be popping by more frequently. But I just hang out every Tuesday from 7 to roughly 8 o'clock or so Eastern. If we're really getting into something or trying to finish something, it'll go a little longer, but typically it's just an hour. And so we're using the metaphor of a academic office hour where we're just here if someone stumbles across and has questions about how to do something using R, not as a statistical platform, but as an authoring platform. So, how do I make a PDF? How do I make a slideshow? How do I make an HTML file? How do I write a book or make a website? So, we're here for all those, to answer all those types of questions or to help people out if they're curious or interested in doing that kind of thing. Um, this slide that you're looking at is available in the comments. It's always, um, the comments I don't think are always, a lot of people seem to be accessing this not when it's live, but at some point in the interceding week here. If you try to take a look at it immediately, I guess I, I heard that uh, the comments aren't always immediately available. So I also put in the description of each video, I think I put the hyperlink to the slides. The slides are done, at 5, 6, 4. I think I just almost sang a Boston song there. Or no, Chicago, sorry. Getting my 1970s musical supergroups mixed up. That's why I almost said a Chicago, 60, 25 or 624. Hey, whatever. Um, anyway, so I generally put the links, which are made, the slides are made quite a bit earlier than in the week than Tuesday. So I put those hyperlinks in the description of each video, and then also there's not a lot of mystery to those hyperlinks. So if you look at the structure of it, it's the end of the URL is just the date, and so the first part of the URL is Bookdown, which is the hosting site we've been using, and then it's me, I think, as part of the URL as a username. And then it's just the date separated by underscores. So those are always available, and hopefully some people are finding those useful. There's a lot of hyperlinks hidden in each of these slides. So each week, what we do is, first of all, we're here if anyone is interested in asking questions about how do I do this kind of thing. That's the primary purpose. But also, what we've been doing, and I've been having a ton of fun with, is just taking one feature of these authoring platforms, and the two that we've been focused on are Quarto, which is kind of the newer product that's supported by Posit, the company that provides our studio, the IDE that I'm using here, and R Markdown, which is got a long history of use for producing document type things. And so each week we've been just kind of picking a focused feature of those authoring platforms and exploring it. And because the exploration is rather unscripted and definitely not linear, so each week what we do is we try to do a more nicely packaged kind of recap of what we found and kind of any insights that were gained. So we will take a look at what we did last week, and actually this week is I chose it for a reason. I chose a custom themes because it's a good follow up to branding. Now, at the end of last week's session, if anyone if anyone stuck around for the end of last week's session, I mentioned that we might continue our exploration into branding this week. Um, and upon reflection, I don't know if there's a whole lot more with the branding strategy that we found that I don't think it was enough to make up a full hour of me just kind of sitting here and programming and making things. But I did find something that was very similar, and it was a help page that I think has a little more description to it than it had the last time I remember stumbling across it. So tonight, what we'll do after we do a recap of last week's focused issue of branding is we'll take a look at a very similar kind of feature, and that similar feature is creating custom themes. Now, these custom themes, my understanding of the way that we're going to approach these is they're going to be primarily focused on this product type. So the product type that we're looking at here, which is a Reveal.js presentation, it has features like a menu and an outline. It has, if you engage with it, you can interact with elements of these slides. I loved this year I made all of my class slides via this method, and it was it was the first time I've ever had a class material that was able to be fully hyperlinked. So trying to reinforce class concepts with that were located on previous slides. And so it sounds like kind of a silly thing, but that's not something that is common or typical with something like a PowerPoint presentation, for example, or even Google Slides. Even though they're hosted online, I'm not sure if it'll probably be a little easier there, I guess. So maybe that is something that's doable, but it's so easy and it was so just kind of nice with these Reveal.js slides. I love them. I love them. I love them. So anyway, when we talk about custom themes, we'll be applying those themes to these types of slides. What you see in this current slide, it's a theme, and so that includes things like these three horizontal bars on the menu that we see down here on the menu icon, or whatever the heck that thing is called, three horizontal bars. There's a washout here in terms of the background color. So if I look around the margins here, the margins are darker, and toward the middle, it's a little brighter. Now that's intentional. That's part of the theme of this slide. So anyway, I guess I'm getting kind of geeked out about it before we get into it. So let's do our transition into what did happen last week.
Last time you remember, Rocky and Bullwinkle finally got to Mount Flatten and started looking for Bullwinkle's mine. Rocky wanted to notify Captain Peter Peachfuzz, head of the intelligence system, of their discovery. So he and Bullwinkle sent out smoke signals telling all. The news spread like wildfire. In no time at all, everybody in the country knew of their sensational discovery. Everybody but the man their message was aimed for, Captain Peter Peachfuzz. The reason? Captain Peachfuzz was just too good at keeping secrets.
Very well, Agent 9, your report.
Well,
Hush, that's a secret, even from me. Agent 7?
Well,
Tut, that's classified information now ready for assignment.
Yes, sir.
Agent 6, follow Agent 4, Agent 4, follow Agent 2, and Agent 2.
Follow Agent 6?
Are you mad? 2 never follows 6.
Meanwhile, back at Mount Flatten, the floating mountain...
So my little Chicago side segue here was actually paralleled by Captain Peachfuzz. Maybe it was in the back of my subconscious or something, but I don't remember him kind of having a problem with 2s and 4s and 6s either. But anyway, so maybe what I should do is I should actually have that song as one of our intro songs one of these weeks. So last week we looked into this issue of branding, and if I follow the hyperlink on the slides here, there's a help page that you'll find that covers the route we took in order to specify branding across multiple document types. And so what that did was it took the form of creating a file within a project folder called _brand.yaml, so YML. And so that took a lot of the metadata that we might be tempted to, or typically want to customize within a given product. So, for example, a slide presentation or a typist or PDF document or an HTML file or a book, a website, any of these other products that can be made using the process that we're talking about here on a weekly basis. The neat thing about having this underscore brand.yaml specification is all of these other product types that are within your project folder are going to pull these features and apply them to the things that you're trying to produce. And so the key feature here is that underscore brand.yaml file that you place within a project folder. And that's what we're looking at here. So when I say YAML specifications, I don't think I have any hyperlink on there. No. When I say YAML specifications, this is the information that we put in that underscore brand.yml file within our project folder. And then the output that we saw, there were two different things that we looked at. We made a typist document, and we also made a reveal presentation. And now you'll see Clarabelle the cow. She's kind of a logo that we used, and we had a funny, I don't know if it's funny. The name of it anyway is funny, and the way in which it renders looks funny. It was actually a Google font called Moolah, and so we decided to use Moolah because we were talking about branding, and we had this kind of cattle. When I say we, I think it was just me, probably in an ether stupor, that said, "Hey, cows." But anyway, so we found this kind of silly font, and without needing to alter any sort of specification or metadata within both the Reveal.js slide specification or the typist document. So if I look at the scripts, here you see these YAMLs, so the information that's contained between the three dash marks. Both of these YAMLs have very little formatting information in them because they're able to pull in this broader formatting information that's available and specified within this underscore brand.yaml file. So the file itself, what we decided to do was, again, kind of because we were talking about branding, we decided to have kind of a bovine theme, I guess you could call it. There are a couple of options that I think work within not just the underscore brand YAML file, but just within YAML headings generally. And one of the things that we could do is, instead of calling out hexadecimal codes, and I've talked about hex codes quite a bit over the weeks, so I found a nice, if you follow that hyperlink, there's actually a really nice presentation of what a hex code is and taking it apart and deconstructing it and what all the different elements mean. So I put that in as a kind of a hidden hyperlink, but it was a nice resource that I found, that I've been using these for years, but I guess I'm not sure I had a very deep understanding of where they come from and why they're important. So if you have a little extra time or are curious, you can certainly follow that. But instead of using hex codes, we could also define a hex code and give it a label. And so there's two labels here, dark gray and blue, that Posit uses as examples. Now, we didn't use those, so that's why they're commented out here. We decided that we're okay just using hex codes. And so you see that on lines 5, 6, and 7. And so the background is the grayed out charcoalish kind of background that you're seeing on my slide here. DDEF1, why did I choose that? That sounds kind of auditory, I guess, in a sense. What is it? DDEF1. It's okay. So it's this kind of grayish blue kind of color, I guess. And you can see that. You can see that on the output here on both the typist PDF as well as the presentation itself. You actually see this kind of same color specified. So that color is actually identified by the background. So the background is literally going to define what the background color of your slides, your typist document, your HTML file, your book, your website, anything else in your project folder looks like. Now, the foreground, the name of this is a little, I, again, I'm not going to second guess anything that Posit does because there's a lot of thought that goes into all of these. But the foreground primarily, what it's affecting is the primary text of your document. So whatever you're creating, there's going to be text in it. So you can think of this as font color, but primary font color. Now, I'm laughing a little bit because I use that word primary and I look on line 7 and there's also the word primary there. So primary is accent color. And so the primary accent color, for example, on this theme is this light blue. If we look at our rendering here, the primary color that we see here in the typist document is this purple. And again, it's using this odd font called Moolah Law. That's why it looks a little weird, or it's one of the reasons it looks a little weird. But so that purple color is what we've specified here on 9900CC. And I'm not sure where we found that. I don't recall last week all of the, again, these are done in such an exploratory kind of manner. I'm not always fully aware of how we get to where we're getting to as I'm typing and trying to look at comments and trying to access resources that I have here. So that's the accent color, and you can see that again most prominently on the hyperlink here. Now, if we looked at the slide presentation, it's also on our menu bar now. So that menu bar that on the current slides is that kind of bright blue typical hyperlink color. We specify it here. What else do we have in the branding specification? We have the logo. So the logo, we just found a PNG of Clarabelle, which is Goofy's girlfriend from Disney, the Goofy from Disney. Now, in the typist document, it kind of puts it as in a nice location that you would expect in something like a form letter. In the reveal slides, I didn't expect it even to appear, but she appears in the lower right-hand corner. Now, if we were to look at my slides, I also have an icon in the lower right-hand corner, but my control over that is a little different. I actually used an extension on that, so there's a hyperlink on that, and my recollection is I had to do a little more work than just saying, hey, I want a logo, but maybe that's because of the hyperlink that I made on it. So if you follow it, it goes to my current business site. So the other thing that we played with was these fonts, and the fonts, there's all kinds of different ways in which you can interact with fonts, and there's all kinds of different ways you can access fonts. What we've been using throughout these now, again, I'm timing this by the number on the title page of these, but this is the 79th, just weekly, hey, how you doing? We're here if you have any questions. Let's take a look at a feature kind of thing. But across those 79 sessions, we've been using different Google fonts almost every week. And so there's so many of them out there, and they're so easy to access and they're so easy to implement in these different products. And so this Moolah Law, we used it again in multiple locations. That was just the font that we said, let's just kind of universally use it. Let's use it for the headings. Let's use it for the primary text. And everywhere you see a word, let's just make it that goofy Moolah Law. And then the scripts themselves, we just used the standard kind of boilerplate information that's included when you create a new Quarto document. So whether that's a presentation or a type of document, for example, a typist document, which over the course of the previous 5 weeks, we had been exploring typist documents. It could be an HTML document. As I said, it could be a broader project, which is kind of how books and websites are structured. And then again, if you're not familiar with YAML specification of these Quarto documents, if you want a little more control over the way in which your document is navigated or the look or feel of your document, the kind of structure that Posit has created in terms of the YAML for individual documents is, if we want to get specific, this line 4 here, where we say the type of document we want you to produce, that turns into a hard return and a tab and then another colon here, and then we can get a little more specific with specifications. And I tend to do that with these Reveal.js slides, just because I like this line 6 feature in particular. So the line 6 feature by default is not enabled, but what this does is, if you have a mouse and you're navigating, you don't have to use your keypad in terms of the up and down keys or left and right keys. You can actually just navigate through with the mouse wheel, and that's how I generally navigate stuff, so I usually turn that on. So that's what that is. And then again, this is what they look like. Now the hosted, when I hosted this slide, some of you, if you access the slide in particular, you might not get the full HTML rendering here, and that's because I'm guessing, I'm not 100% sure, but I think it's because of how I chose to embed this file, and there's not everything that needs to accompany it is embedded within what I hosted. I kind of feel guilty about how much space I've been using as a free hosting site. So Posit, it's remarkable. Again, I'm not paid by them, don't have any association. I'm just very impressed by the services that they provide, and try to support people, and they support people without charging as an entry point anyway, and they're very generous with that. So anyway, I didn't want to push too much up to their hosting site, just because I have so much up there already. So if that doesn't come through, and you want to access it, drop me a note and I can certainly get that to you. The PDF file, that's self-contained, that should be accessible and available to everyone. Okay, so today I thought we would do kind of an extension of that branding, and that extension is to look at custom themes. Now I usually just have one hyperlink on a page like this, or on content like this. I broke it up a little bit because we're gonna have to get into CSS custom style sheets, and so this is something that controls the styling and look and feel of HTML products. And where we're going with this custom theming is we're going to stick with Reveal.js slides. So fundamentally that's an HTML product. That's how it's rendered. It needs a browser in order to fully display kind of all the features of it. But the styling language itself has been changing and undergoing an evolution over the course of the last, I don't know, few years at least. And so what traditionally was known as CSS at some point was known as SASS, and currently, and I'm not 100% that I got the sequence right, I know that CSS was first. I don't know if SAS was second or Sassy CSS was second. So there's some difference between all of this stuff. I don't fully understand it. It seems like it's a language preference kind of thing. Where the heck is let's see if we can find our slides here. So we are going to, what did I do? Oh yeah, we called this the Mooster piece. That was part of our, that was part of our kind of cattle theme. So there's some information there about CSS and Sassy CSS if we need it. And then the more germane, helpful, I think, information that we have is on the themes word. There's a hyperlink there to the Posit help page that kind of walks us through how to get specific with themes. And again, I think we're gonna at least to start with this. My understanding is this sort of theming is intended to be specific to these Reveal.js slides, and that's how I've been using them. So I think we'll start from scratch, and we'll see if we can custom theme a slide. And so we'll go through the existing themes as well. So let's take a look at that. Let's see if we can find the existing themes. They're actually at the top of this page. So there's 11 built-in themes. So let's go back into our studio, and I have so many different projects. We don't need a project for this. Let's close out of the live streams project, and we can just create a new file. And so we'll create a Quarto document, which is a presentation, and we'll use the Reveal.js presentation. Again, title and author, that's gonna auto-populate into our YAML, the very top of our specification of our slide deck. So we can just leave that for now. And again, this is my 2-line YAML, I guess 4 lines if you want to include the beginning and ending of it. YAMLs are kind of notorious for being picky about indentation. It's funny, that's one of the distinctions that, as I was kind of slightly prepping for tonight, it's one of the distinctions that I saw. I didn't read carefully enough about, but I did see that one of the distinctions that people who use Sass and CSS and Sassy CSS were noting was that there's a big difference syntactically in terms of the structuring of your specifications. So things like indents, are they important or not? And in some senses they are, in some contexts they're not. When in YAMLs, they are important. So I always recommend first coming into these to just, without much modification, just see if it renders. And the rendering, it's going to tell you if there's any sort of capabilities or dependencies that are necessary that you don't have. And where the heck am I? This PC documents. You know where I've been storing stuff just on these live streams? And this is not something I typically do. I'm going to put them on the desktop here. And so let's call it theming. Getting a little better with calling documents something that's specific to its purpose. When we're doing something like this, it's just so nonsense. The content itself is meaningless. We're trying to figure out kind of ways around structuring and formatting, and but the content itself is fairly meaningless. So, and again, I'm navigating this through my keyboard, just using the up and down, or you can use the left and right keys. There's 4 slides here. We can interact with the menu on the lower left, and you see the 4 slides identified here in terms of the headings on them. So Untitled Quarto Bullets Code. If we were to change the name of this from Untitled to Best Slides in the World, we should see that reflected in the menu itself. Let's get some friends in here. I don't have any human friends coming in tonight, I don't think, but we'll get some feline friends here. So there's the best slides in the world, and if I interact with the menu, we see it enacted there as well, or reflected. What did I say? Enacted? Yeesh. Reflected is what I meant. Okay, so in terms of getting some of these default themes, the one that I have been using that has this kind of washed out center, it's either Night or League. I think it's League, but I'm not sure. There's only 11 themes that are built in currently on these Reveal.js slides. So, we can take a look at them just quickly here because, this isn't RStudio, it's just Windows in general. If anyone out there has a recommendation for how to disable the auto sizing feature, I would love it, because it's not smarter than me yet. It thinks it's smarter than me, but when I'm dragging something, I don't also want to expand it. I typically just want to drag it. And I know that's a feature that you can probably disable. I would love to disable that. Okay, so on line 3 here, we're gonna take that reveal.js, do a hard return and a tab over. Tabs are kind of notorious in these contexts too. If I now hard return, it'll probably give me the proper tabbing in the RStudio environment. So I can say theme. And let's go just with the first one here, beige. Let's try it without the indents first, and I guess I can show what kind of issues we have and you can have with improper indentation and the YAMLs of these types of documents. Now the errors that we're getting, I have just recently I updated RStudio as well as R itself. So in terms of R, I have wow, that's, for me, this is incredibly recent. So April 11th, that's, and of this year, that's pretty unreal for me. In terms of the version of RStudio I have, where is it? I don't even know where that is, to tell you the truth. There it is. Build 563. It looks like it's December 1st. Yeah, it's a little. I did get some notification that I do need a new RStudio. I'm still kind of getting used to this one because I just loaded it very recently. So let's try beige. We see the whole reason I mentioned what I did is because the output that we're getting here, and this tends to kind of evolve over time as well, but this is very useful. It's very helpful. So it's saying that the YAML front matter, that's where our issue is. And 9 times out of 10, when that happens, it's an indentation issue. Now we did see the other, well, it was still an indentation issue. So I'm going to do the proper indentation. We can see what that looks like. Now the font changed. Sometimes the location of the second level headers change as well. So the second level headers in these reveal.js documents is how I identify a new slide. First and second level headers. So 1 hashtag or 2 hashtags means a new slide. Now those also have some consequence with regard to how information is displayed as well as how you navigate things. So there's the capability of having kind of more sophisticated navigation routes across your slides if you mix first and second level headers. Now this is kind of bugging me, so I'm going to do something here real quick. You can see the middle of beige is washed out as well. So this kind of looks like the theme that I've been using in my weekly slides. So instead of charcoal and then getting lighter charcoal, it's whatever that is, probably beige, since it's called beige. It's beige, and then it gets to almost a white in the middle. The white is a lot more prominent here, right? It looks like a nuclear blast right behind best slides in the world. And then you see these 3 menus here. You'll also see that accent on the hyperlink. So these are some of the features that we already played with last week with branding. And so if I took the, well, we're not going to do that. I was going to say I can take last week's _brand.yaml specification and put it here, but we don't have a project defined yet for this. This is just a standalone. Slide presentation. So let's take a look at some of these other options that we have. That's beige. The other thing I want to do is I want to do my mouse wheel because it makes navigating so much easier. My hand is on the mouse. I would want to keep it on the mouse instead of going back and forth for the keyboard. So that's just going to make my mouse wheel navigate that, is all it should do. So let's take a look at some of these other theme options. Honestly, I haven't checked all of them out. So it might be boring for people. Sorry. I don't know if we're normally boring anyway. We're probably normally boring. But I don't know if this is more boring than normal. If it is, sorry. I'm just looking to see if I have a drop that I could play that's associated with this. I'll play one in a little bit. Okay, so blood, we have played with blood. Blood was one that we played with when we had some Halloween themes when we were around Halloween time. Um, and so we actually had a now here you see the font is massive relative to beige. So it's not just a different font, but the size, the relative size of the font, it's taking up much more of the page space. And then you see this the red specification with the accents. Um, the that font honestly doesn't really wow me that much, uh, but we could easily override that and change that, and that's one of the things we're going to do with our custom themes. The other thing we can do looking through here is we can see if there's any elements of any of these that we might want to retain. Uh, Dark, some of these just don't have much to them. Let's see if I can drag this over so it's easier for us to, there's that doggone auto fill again. I do not want autofill. Okay, we should be able to see it here. So dark looked very much like default. Uh, when I say that, it looks like the same font. It looks like the same highlighting. It's just that the background is black instead of white. So I'm jumping ahead a little bit here, looking at default, but I'm just curious to see. Yeah, it's the same. So default and dark look to me like just inverses of each other in terms of the foreground, background. Uh, and so that makes sense. Oh, default was the next one anyway. So dark, default, League. League is the one that I've come to kind of, it's my go-to, I guess, theme on these slides. I will probably mix it up one of these days, but I like the font. I don't know why. It's there's a word for it, but the typesetting is closer together. It's a little more Alice Lagoon like. That two people understood that. The hyperlink accents, it is light. It's more turquoise-ish. I guess I hadn't noticed that. Uh, just you know, I haven't looked at these back to back like this. I'm only going to scroll through the first two slides on these to see what the title font looks like, and then that hyperlink. It's a little easier to see the hyperlink color than the three horizontal lines here. Moon. I don't know. What do we think that looks like? I guess I'm curious. Cheese, maybe. Ooh, that. Wow, I wouldn't have expected that. Okay, so another turquoise-ish, like a more saturated turquoise. Night I used to use. Night looks a lot like League, but there's not that washout in the middle. The accents you see here, now we're at a yellow or cyan or orangish kind of, cyan. What is wrong with me? Yellow, orangish kind of color. The font, I don't mind the font. I'm probably had that one because it's a bit of an appealing font, I think. Serif, well, no, they're all sans serif, so they don't have the flourish to them. This looks to me like the only one with a font that does have serif, which makes sense. So again, the serif is going to be these tilde-ish curves on on letters and symbols that are actually presented. So that's, that has a little classy look to it, I guess. A little more elegance. So some elegance with that. I just have so many drops that I haven't used in a while. I've been saving them for when people come in. So let's check out Simple. The cats that are watching us there reminded me of those cats. Ooh, Simple's kind of nice. You really see the difference in those fonts and how the fonts are being rendered and displayed here. There's kind of a purple accent. What is it? Maybe dark blue? Indigo? Let's go with indigo. Let's call it indigo. Sky, Solarize, and then we'll be done with the 11 kind of built in. Wow, that's really different. If you were creating a presentation on how robots are going to take over the world, I would imagine that this is the font and kind of combination of look that you might want. I don't know why, but I get a very strong robots are taking over the world. AI is going to dominate all of us, like feel from that for some reason. That's probably not what they were going for, I'm guessing. So last one is Solarized. Let's take a look at that. Now, the sky looks like Solarized too. Solarized, that looks very similar to, what was it, beige? I don't know what the difference is there. So Solarized and, was it beige? One of them looks very, very similar. Anyway, so, there's some neat kind of baked in. No, that wasn't it. Anyway, we don't need to rehash that. I'm just kind of curious that really did remind me of the fonts and layout of one of them that we looked at. Okay, so let's say that we're not satisfied with these options. So I would like, in addition to branding, or maybe apart from branding, or maybe the branding just doesn't go far enough. Maybe the branding, again, was primarily focused in terms of what we took a look at. Just background, font, accent. Now, we can certainly do that as well, logo, but we can, with our custom themes, we can also play with everything else. We can play with we can play with the size of what's displayed. We can play with whether headings are centered, what they look like, again, the size, the display, the difference. We can get a lot more kind of focused, I guess, is a better way of saying that. So there's so many different elements of these presentations that we can focus on, target, and make our own in terms of what we want it to look like. So I'm going to take the theme. Actually, I'm just going to hashtag it out for now, because once we create our own theme, we're gonna want to identify that there's a theme that we're interested in. Again, it's just going to be our theme. So let's take another look at our help page here that talks about customizing themes. Again, here's one way to call it out. Now this is calling out two different themes. We're going to see if we can actually just call out our own theme. So well, we probably can't. So we probably aren't going to be, well, we'll see. Maybe we'll try it. Where my mind was going here, these cats are messing with me. Where my mind was going here was we might need something to provide default values upon which we can build. And so that's why we might need a couple of themes specified in ours alone. Maybe doesn't work. Now, default should be there regardless. Default should mean that's kind of what it's expecting when theme is not specified. So let's take a look here. So the way that this is structured, and again, this is either Sass or Sassy CSS. Part of the syntactic structure of these is this $ kind of convention. And the $ convention, my understanding is this is going to be used for kind of very broad, very applied to elements within your broader presentation kind of stuff. So here you see those headings that I alluded to. These CSS rules, these look like more standard CSS that can be applied to specific elements, whereas these defaults are going to apply also to specific elements if they're indicated as such. For example, the background of the slides. But here with these rules, these are going to be areas where we can be a lot more targeted in terms of customization that we want to apply on a limited basis to specific elements. So now the interesting thing I saw when I was kind of taking a look at this before the live stream tonight was this exclamation point default specification within these Sassy CSS files. I've used exclamation point important, but I hadn't used exclamation point default in structuring these style sheets. And what this says is that it can be overridden. And so that's kind of a neat thing. So it's nice to know that the Posit people, when they created these theme sheets, they were already thinking that, well, people might want to do something a little bit different. And here's calling out just the style sheet that you create yourself. So there is a listing of the types of information that we can affect with the broad defaults, and then there should be a listing also of, let's see, man, there's a lot. Okay, so let's play with some of these. So now one thing that I didn't think about that I'm going to go back and change is that calling out the file that we create is going to be simplified if we do this within a project folder. So I was kind of hoping that we don't need to do that, but it's going to make things a lot easier if we actually do. So let's go ahead and create a project, just because that is where we want to put it. So what do we call this? Theming? Hopefully I put that in the right spot. I thought I did. Yes. Yep, that's where I wanted it. Okay, and we will ask for a Quarto presentation again, or Quarto document. I think both of these wizards are going to get you to the same spot. What do we call it? The best in the world. And then we did our mouse wheel, so I'm just going to repeat the elements that we had. Here you see the second level header that defines a new slide. So there's 4 slides total, including the title slide here. I think I already have. Okay. So there we are. Let's take a look at our help page here, and we have an example of a SCSS file here. So let's just copy that as a start, and I'm going to put that in my project directory. And so a couple of different ways to do this. If I look, it says CSS. I think if I open a CSS file, though, that's not quite what we want. We want the SCSS file. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to open up a text file, paste in that information, and I'm going to call it. I'm going to call it out with an SCSS extension. So that SCSS extension is duplicating what we have here on the help page. So my theme, we don't want to call it my theme. That's no fun. So we can call it not cows. Again, I said I was going to be more descriptive in my labeling of things. So playing theme, playground, theme playground, let's call it. And we'll give it that extension. I'm not sure. Obviously, it does make a difference. So in our Studio IDE here, just calling it a SCSS file with the editor theme that I have going here, it actually recognized the CSS elements of this. So the one kind of bad thing that we have here is I gave it a name that's going to be hard to replicate here. Theme playground, too many letters. If a student did this, I would complain, but I'm doing it, so I can't complain. So let's render and see what that looks like. Okay, so we're seeing some elements here. This again should be our accent. Now the accent does not look very different from the background, and we're gonna change that. That's okay, but let's find a nice hexadecimal code that we can use, and we'll put that in. We'll put that in our theming here. So the body background, I guess we can change to. With all of this stuff, we can change. So the body color, it looks to me like that's rendering as the font. Um, let's change that to our favorite. Pew. It's not Puce. What is that? It's a. That's a sign. No, that's not a sign. That's like a. Chartreuse. My goodness. I'm sorry. I can't think straight. So like a chartreuse kind of color. So that's coming through as, is that where we expected it to come through? Body color. So that looks like primary text. Now the title text itself is coming through different, and that's something that I've been playing with on these weekly slides. It's, I believe that that's probably here, the presentation heading color. So let's, if not, we'll find it because it's going to be listed on, I kind of like that. Violet, lilac. Let's do lilac. Let's see what that looks like. The expectation is that's going to be headings. So there's our first heading. Second, yeah, so that's hitting all of our headings. It's actually kind of nice. In terms of the font itself, no, it's not nice. What am I talking about? It's terrible. So what are we doing here? We got green and purple. We can call this lilac, right? So this is like our lilac theme. Let's put in a picture. We need a picture. Let's find a nice pretty picture of lilacs. The internet's a little slow. Hopefully I'm not lagging too much. I kind of like that. Now, we should be able to put, we can put that image anywhere, but we should be able to do a background, title, slide, back, no, title, slide. I'm just looking to see what the actual specification is if we want to make it as a background. The easier thing to do is just put it on this first page. So let's just put in an image there. And again, it's not that difficult to have it span the entire kind of background of the slide itself. That is really pretty, isn't it? So we should, let's do one thing. So the headings are the color of the flowers. The text is the color of the leaves a little bit. Maybe the background, should we do blue? Let's do a nice color of blue for the background. Let's see what that looks like. Those are kind of pretty blues. So let's do, what was it, 8F. FD 3FE. There we go. And the HTML files, the interactivity of the HTML files, they, depending on what we're adjusting, they'll sometimes auto update, oftentimes not. You're also seeing, again, the RStudio version that I have, there's some discrepancies between the preview pane and the actual document. So in the preview pane, you're not seeing the image being displayed. I'm not sure why that is. Okay, now the green looks hideous now, doesn't it? Okay, so our theme, we're obviously not interior designers here, so we would need some consultation from someone that knows what they're doing to help us out here. And all I'm affecting right now are the elements that are within kind of the help file that we saw. There are a lot of other things that we can tweak and affect, and looks like we'll probably do that next week because we're running out of time here. The line height, now this is interesting to me. So these EMs is EM is a unit of distance, I guess, or unit of measure that I've been using increasingly in all these different documents. And so EM means enlarge it to the magnification of, and that's not exactly what it means, but that's how I'm interpreting it. That's what it does. So that is its effect. But in terms of what EM stands for itself, it doesn't mean enlarge, magnify, but that's how I interpret it. So it says, give me 1.3 times the normal size magnification on line height. And so let's change this back to a decent color so we can see the text, so we can see the effect of the line height, because that's one that I'm curious about. Now, A should be an HTML tag, and we're looking to see just kind of the spacing between lines here of information that we have. And so let's change it. Let's blow it way up. Let's see what happens. And I think that should have, that should operate within paragraph. Oh, it's not. Okay. So if we want to target line differences, we'll have to look for a different element, which is fine. We'll, again, that's something that we'll probably do in the off week here or next week. So I'll do a little exploration in terms of the element that will affect it, and then we'll try it. Our menu hasn't changed in terms of its color. Now, the only coloring that we haven't played with in terms of our CSS, there's two of them. There's a link color. I thought we changed link color. We didn't? Oh, we got rid of the hyperlink. Let's put a hyperlink in that first page. And hyperlinks, we can just say hyperlink this, exclamation point. Those are kind of structured similarly to the image callout. I'm just using the square bracket and then parenthesis convention. Within the parentheses, I'm going to put the URL to whatever it is I want to be hyperlinked. So the only difference here is the exclamation point. So the exclamation point prior to this sequence of syntax is the identification that what's coming here is an image. We don't have an image. We'll just we'll go to Google, because again, I'm a 90s kid and I don't have any creativity for websites beyond stuff that happened in the 90s. So the hyperlink this, you can see upon interaction, you see that font change, and that's obviously what's happening here with the link color. So link color, if we want to make that, we can make that our badass, and it should be more noticeable upon hover. Or actually, it's just by itself. Okay, so we would have to go in there to change the upon hover. So I think next week what we'll do is a couple of things. So we'll try to target specific elements by finding the tags that are associated with those elements, and we should be able to override them. This default, we shouldn't need this. So all of these should work fine if we just get rid of defaults. That default was important for Posit when they create the underlying kind of basis for a starting point for these. And not only a starting point, but for them also a finishing point. Yeah, so we're getting the same rendering regardless of whether we have those defaults or not. With our own CSS file, we shouldn't need that. The selection background, this does, I'm not seeing where that's being rendered. That's the only element that we don't yet have identified. So let's take a look at our help page before we drop off tonight here. Too many tabs. It's like I have so many tabs over the course of these weeks. Did I drop it? I must have dropped it. So we can go to this week's slides. and I can hyperlink from there. So again, I have a hyperlink on the slides for the help page. But this element right here, we're kind of looking to see what that does. And so there's a listing here of the different elements that are included. So let's see if we can, hopefully it's not hidden in a collapsible kind of thing. I'm just going to do a page find on that. There it is. So, oh, it lightens the link color by 25%. So that's, why do we have a color there? I don't understand. Okay, I'll look into it. So I'm not sure why there's a color specified with it. If the tag itself is saying that, oh, I see. No, it still doesn't make sense. So it's taken the link color, and we know what the link color is because the link color is specified here. So what this is saying is it's just it's lightening it. I don't know that this is having the effect that we wanted it to. So what's going on here? So I would like to comment this out. This is, because this is not our script, we're gonna have to use a different comment specification. I believe it's / asterisk, if I remember right. Yeah. And then I have, now that / asterisk is just getting rid of lots of stuff until you get a second asterisk /. So one way of keeping information in these CSS or Sassy CSS files that we might want to deal with later, but I'm just curious to see if our this is the most hideous looking format that I've ever seen. Let's get our normal background back so it's a little easier to see. But I'm curious to see if that lightning is the same regardless whether there's a color specification in there or not. Because the reading of the command is saying that it should do, yeah, it's doing the same thing. And we should be able to override that. So we should be able to make that more noticeable or less noticeable in terms of the 25%. Okay, so we didn't get that far tonight. Sorry about that. But we did get a personalized SCSS file located within project directory, and we should be able to tweak these elements to make a slide presentation look like what we want it to look like. Now, in combination with that branding option, we should be able to control literally everything in here that we want to control. The first thing I tried, however, was line height, and we saw that that wasn't operative in the manner that we thought it was operative. So that's one thing that I'll look into between this week and next. So I think next week we'll continue this. We will try to... Sorry, I was stifling that for about a minute. So next week we'll see if we can continue this and build a slide presentation. Maybe instead of just kind of randomly taking colors, maybe we'll go with a palette scheme and we'll try to build something useful and something that maybe looks a little nicer and has a specific theme. So, you know, unless someone comes around and has an idea of a theme type, maybe we'll just do like a Pink Panther theme, since I like the Pink Panther. So we'll get away from lilacs, I think, next week, and then maybe we'll continue with this, we'll build upon this, and we'll do probably a Pink Panther theme. Okay, thanks everybody. See you next week.